really. Is this my microphone? Okay. Sorry about being late. Been with the young people, and no offense, but they're more important than you are. Some of you, I haven't even been able to look out and see all my friends out here yet. So give me some time as I rush. This is my life, okay? And whether we like it or not, we're just kind of rushing from one thing to the next. So let me just go down here a little bit, get my breath, and so on and so forth. Thank you all for taking a night out of your life. Unfortunately, it's only going to be one. I hope that what I have to talk about tonight, I'll get as much in as I can in one evening. I always ask this question before I begin, before I even set up what I'm going to do, and I'm just now thinking about what I'm going to do. Were you told what I'm going to do? No. Okay, good, so I can do what I want. All right, that's a good thing. Is there anybody here, first Messianic thing they've ever been to? Is anybody here like that? A couple of you? Don't be ashamed. Is there anybody here seeing me? This is the first time you've seen Brett Scott, okay? Handful of you? Okay, anybody here under duress? I knew there may be one hand. There isn't. No, is there anybody here that thought they were going to a Shackley convention and walked into the wrong room? Okay. Some of you will. Oh, there you are. I tried to find your number today when I was on the road. Okay. Okay, now that we got that, is there anybody else here I know? Let me give you hugs. I've seen you before. How are you? We're going to do a subject tonight. I'm not going to do any introductory things. Most of you know who I am from the hand raise and so forth. So there's no sense giving into the background, all that kind of boring stuff. By the way, I know it's boring, but something I think is always a necessity, because when I'm sitting out listening to someone, especially spending a whole night with someone. Because the last time I checked, and I checked this on the internet, I don't know why, because I have a calculator, I can figure it out myself. But I was on this internet thing, it showed me how many weekends I had left in my life. You know, and at the time when I did that, I had 1,242 weekends left. Now that kind of put it in perspective for me. I go, ooh. So from that point forward, I've been going, 1241, 1240, 1239, oh my God. And so how that resonated with me is the reality when someone takes one of those times that they have left and comes and listens. I'm very honored, okay? I'm very honored. Much gratitude. Thanks for you coming out this evening, taking a night out of your life, and you could have been doing a whole lot of other things, and you chose to spend it with me. That is quite an honor, and thank you so very much for that. We are going to be discussing a subject that involves another thing for us to divide ourselves over in the Hebrew roots movement. One of the unique things, one of the major differences, I guess, between traditional Christianity and the Hebrew roots movement is we have a much bigger imagination on things to divide ourselves over. Because now we've discovered that the Old Testament is relevant to our life, so we have, another 39 books to argue over, okay? And so some of you well know that we're professionals at this kind of thing. And so it's not as if we don't have enough things to argue about, like the Torah for all this time. Is the Torah for us? Is the Torah not for us? Some of you have heard me say for a long time, when someone says to me, is the commandments for us today? Is the Torah for this generation? I say, I don't know. Is breathing for this generation? Is eating food and drinking water, is that for us too, or is that just for Jews? We're the only ones who speak. And the reason I say that is because religious men can't conceive of the fact that it is the Word of God. Literally, this is what I'm doing with the children in physics right now. The Word of God created and sustains everything in the universe. Those commandments of our God are what brought things into existence. They're the things which keep things into existence. But religious men just think there's just a bunch of stuff given to a bunch of people over here, so they just look different from this bunch of people over here. And that's what we've done generation after generation. Like there's no rhyme or reason to any of God's commandments. There's no reason for doing these things. He just gives them to the people so they'll look different, from like Jehovah's Witnesses and Christian Scientists and Hare Krishnas, which thank goodness they're not allowed at the airport anymore. I noticed that. That was something the orange is missing from the airport. I looked right at a guy wearing orange and I said that. Isn't that interesting? But the orange clothes are missing from the airport, and I think that's one wonderful attribute of our current government. Okay, We're going to be discussing an issue called Paul, because that's another issue for us to divide ourselves over. And it's happening. As I travel across not just the United States, but I just spoke in my 31st country not a few weeks back. This thing is spreading all over the world, as many of you well know. Believe it or not, America is not the only place this is happening, okay? It's happening all over the world, and these people are beginning to see these things, and I saw no better or no more wonderful of a picture than in China, for example. Eddie, some of you who know Eddie Chumby, okay, name dropper, name dropper. Some of you know Eddie, name dropper. Some of you who haven't seen me are going, I think this man is nuts. I can't believe I spent a whole night. I tell you, I just like life. And that's one of the things that I want to spread to the young people, is that they're constantly getting bombarded with fatalism, and things are going to end next week, and the comet's going to come and destroy us all, and so forth, and the world's going to end, and heat dead bird bodies and hairy eyeballs. That's Arlo Guthrie, for any of you who just wanted to date yourselves. But anyway, and they're getting constantly bombarded with this stuff from the religious side of their life, and guess what? They turn on the TV, and they go watch a movie, and they see the same kind of stuff going on in the TVs and the movies and so forth, and our young people are losing hope, and so on and so forth. But I hope to add an element of, you know, if you want to be an astronaut, you pursue that with everything in your heart. And when you do that, you be the most righteous, godly astronaut on the planet. And if you want to be a mother with a husband and raise a family, you pursue that with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and you be the most righteous mother out there. That's the message we should be giving our children. Because I know it's easy for you and me to say to ourselves, well, you know, I can't wait till it comes, because heaven's so much better than earth. That's easy for us to say. It's easy for me to say. But a 15-year-old kid can't relate to that whatsoever. And once again, we're crushing the next generation, and these children are coming up, especially in foreign countries, and they're saying, I'm losing our hope. And they end up going out and doing things that they think are sowing their wild oats, and before the world ends next Tuesday, or whatever. I am a big proponent that Yeshua is returning. Do not get me wrong. I'm just not confident of everybody's predictions of his returning, but I'm confident that he's returning. So let's never give up the joy that we have in Yeshua, our Messiah, and the joy of the life that he gave us, and the difference we make in other people's lives when they see our lives and say, I want to be like that. That is one of our main purposes on this, so if you will, is to occupy. As I was about to say earlier, this last visit to China was such an excellent example of why the Father prophesied that in the latter days a pure language will be turned back to the people. Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9. And there's a lot of arguments over the ages as to what that pure language is. And to me, the abundance is obvious and evident. And that's the reason why many of us are doing what we're doing for such a particular time as this. But in going to a place like that, where you're normally killed for saying some of the things that we said, okay? Instead, you've got 400 Chinese from the mainland, and you have 200 Chinese from Hong Kong. One speaking a Cantonese dialect, the other one speaking a Mandarin dialect, so you got two different Chinese dialects going. There's a group of Spanish-speaking people in the back of the room, and then there's, you know, two white Americans, Eddie and myself, okay, up front doing the English thing, and we are all singing familiar worship songs that everybody would know, only there's 4 different languages going on at the same time. And it was kind of neat, it was kind of nice to see everybody praising and worshiping and so forth, but they have a custom in China. And that custom is that whatever song you're singing, if you're singing 5 songs in a row, at the end of every song, they burst right into the Shema. Whatever key you're in that song, they go right into the Shema. And when they all went into the Shema, all of us, all singing the Shema in Hebrew, 4-part harmony began to flow, and the roof blew off that place. Eddie and just tears flowing from my eyes looking at these Chinese people. Shema Yisrael, all singing this together in this auditorium. What a mighty, magnificent display of the reason why Zephaniah 3 verse 9 tells you that he's going to turn a pure language back to the people, so we can serve him with one consent. If there's ever a time, I believe in the body of Messiah, when we need to be one, my friends, it is now. Because the enemy's gathering together to be one. All these centuries, all these various New World organizations and Rothschilds and Bilderbergers and New World Orders and so forth, and Muslims and Catholics and whatever are all fighting each other and so forth, and now they're all going to begin to come together to destroy one common enemy, us. And while they're coming together, what are we doing? You know what we're doing. We're flying in 400 different directions, and now we've come up with another reason to divide us. Because I believe in this country, for example, that we are doing the same thing to the Constitution of these here United States as we have done to the Torah. We're slowly corrupting it, defiling it, making it an irrelevant document, that too, an irrelevant document in our country. And my prophecy, if I ever prophesied anything in my life, is it's my opinion that if the Messiah tarries in the year 2020, the Torah, Freudian slip there, the Constitution will be in the Smithsonian Institute. It'll be in a museum. It'll be something that you pay $6.50 each to go in and see this ancient relic that you can blow the dust off of and so forth. But thank goodness, men, fathers, have maintained this document and didn't cop out some time ago and say, well, it's no longer for us anymore, wink, wink, hint, hint. Thank goodness they had the wherewithal and the temerity not to do this and to maintain this document in the Library of Congress, surrounding it with bulletproof glass and laser beams. Why? Keep it away from Nicolas Cage. But maybe not, okay? And so these men have maintained this document because it's the foundation, if you will, of our country. I'm not talking about the way our country is now. I'm talking about the way it's founded. How many of you can agree with me that our country is not the same country it was not too long ago? It's not. And in my life, no matter what my belief and prophecies are, it is quite a shock to see some of the rapid changes that are beginning to take place very quickly here in our culture. Which leads me to one that's very popular right now, and that's the Second Amendment. It's, because of the Sandy Hook thing, but it was a compilation of all things that happened, quite by accident. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Over time, and so forth. And it's amazing to me, because we do the same thing to the Bible as we do to the Constitution. Why is it that a group of people over this side, can look at the Second Amendment of the Constitution and conclude that only the military has a right to bear arms? And this group of people over here looks at the exact same words and concludes, no, we all, the citizens, have a right to defend themselves against the government, okay? And then we have the right to bear arms. We're all looking at the exact same words. Why are we coming to two different conclusions on what it means if we're all looking at the exact same words? Well, now the point is not for some itinerant, roaming Hebrew roots teacher to come into your congregation and present you with another problem. Okay, we got enough of that. We should be coming and providing solutions, okay, not problems. But here's another thing you never thought about. Come on, it's a little bit funny. But that's what we have a tendency to do. We should be providing solutions. So the solution is to which one of those views is right, is to go back to the beginning. The end is revealed out of the beginning. So we go back to the beginning of the foundation of this country, and we have constitutional convention records that you can now get on the internet and read for yourselves. You don't have to just go to your public library. You can go and read the minute-by-minute conversations that were taking place in the Constitutional Convention records recorded by the 13 original states who already had state constitutions, and all these discussions that they had about the Second Amendment. And when you go back to the beginning and you read the context and the culture of the document that we are seeing today, you see it's very clear that all citizens had a right to bear arms. So it gets cleared up when you do what? You go back to the beginning and read the context and the culture of what is written, because if you don't do that, then you read into it whatever you want to read into it. You do it backwards, and I'm sure I'm not saying something that most of you in here do not already know. And so we are doing that with Paul. We're doing the same thing with him. There's two words I want to talk about tonight. I hope I can get to them. Somebody at some point needs to let me know when I'm supposed to stop. Okay? Or how long I'm supposed to go. We're going to talk about two Hebrew words, and if you've ever heard them, I hope it will give you some further insight into the two meanings of these very provocative words that are everywhere in your Bible. And that's halakha and agadah. Halakha and agadah. Because we have people right now, they're not Christians per se, they're not Protestants, they're not Catholics, they're people within the Hebrew roots walk that cannot deal with the things that Paul says. They have trouble defending, developing a decent apologetic for the things that Paul writes and so forth. Their conclusion is that Paul is a false apostle and that his books and writings and passages should be taken out of the canon. That would be the logical conclusion. If Paul is a liar, if Paul is a false apostle, then we have no business reading his letters and so forth. Now, I call this American Medical Association theology. That's just my own little term. Now, I don't mean to offend any doctors in here, any physicians, because not all physicians are like that, but I guarantee in my life experiences and the multitudes of emails I get, many are. Many doctors in this country are trained that when there's something wrong with you, like there's a contradiction in your body or there's a problem, the answer is to do two things. They're trained primarily to do two things, and you know what I'm talking about. My doctor does this to me every single time I go in. So you're saying, Brad, what are you going to him for? Number one, there's a problem. You come into his office. Number one thing, give you some chemicals. Give you some pills, give you some medication, numb yourself up so you can forget about it for a while so we can hurry up and get you out and bring the next one in at $45 an hour. And when that doesn't work, the second thing is to what? Open you up and remove that sucker right out of there. Now that's basically fundamentally it. There's a lot of details in between, obviously, but that's the bottom line many times. So we don't have doctors like we used to have. You know, you go to some building today and you go to 45th floor or whatever, you sit in the lobby of an office. Back in the old days, remember the old days? The doctor came to your house. He came to you, come walking in there with a little black bag and so forth, and he knew you. He already knew your family. Chances are when he comes, because there's something wrong with you, chances are he delivered you as a baby. Chances are he delivered your mother who delivered you as a baby, okay? And that's the kind of doctor it used to be, and he would spend the time with you, and he would know you, and he would know your family. I know the culture is such a way that it's difficult to do these days, but nonetheless, this is the reality. That they used to spend the time to get to the source to find out what was wrong with you, rather than just automatically giving you a pill or opening it up and removing it. And I think the biggest problem in the body, one of the biggest problems in the body of Messiah is because we're so divided, everybody's got their agendas, everybody's got their pride and so forth, that we don't get together long enough to be able to search the problem out. I'm confident that if we all got together, a lot of these contradictions would be cleared up, because I'm confident I don't know everything. But I am confident that all of us together know almost everything. Almost. Well, are we not the body of Messiah? Okay, but see, but this only happens we're together. What I'm trying to suggest is the bad guy, whatever you want to call him, the bad guy knows the power that we have when we are one. He knows what we can do when we are all together at the one time. So what is he going to do, Julie? He's going to do everything he can to keep us divided, to keep us split up, because he knows a kingdom divided shall not stand. So once again, while the enemy's gathering together as one, we are running off in different directions and so forth. I remember, I may end up the whole night just telling stories. But I remember not too long ago, I was invited to an MJMI union thing. Some of you are familiar with UMJC and so on and so forth, up in Pennsylvania. And they deliberately invited I'm going to use their words. This wouldn't be my words. Okay, I'm not necessarily, I'm tagged as a two-house teacher. Okay, but that's not really what I teach. I don't spend much of my time teaching it. I agree with the whole concept of two houses. God split up and God's going to bring it back together. But I don't specifically teach that, but I get, lumped in with that all the time. Because quite frankly, I don't care if you're one house, two house, no house, outhouse. I don't care what house you are, okay? My passion is that the commandments of God are for all of God's people all the time. Now you call that whatever you want and get to it however you want. The reality is that God's commandments bless His people and hold the universe together. And when certain groups of people stop doing that, everything starts to fall into an accelerated state of entropy and corruption. And this is the reason why the world is the way it is, because some people of God are doing what God said. Instead of we got God divided up like a frog in a biology lab, we got him thinking, well, this group of my people over here, they have to keep all my commandments. And this group of my people over here, they only have to keep 7 of them. And this group of people over here of mine, they don't have to keep any of them. And this group of people over here of mine, they can keep them if they want to, but they don't have to keep them if they don't want to. I'm sure you've heard that before, okay? And we wonder why in the world right now there's 37,000 plus denominations in our world. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. We divide people up because we divide our theology up. It's naturally going to follow those things. And so, once again, the idea is to pull these things together so we can work together for the same thing. And we can do that. I'm going to suggest to you the leaders are mostly the problem. People like me are usually the problem. There went my ministry. And what I mean by that is going back to the story I started an hour and a half ago, if I get invited to this place where the microphone just bit big.
There's your battery.
You've already anticipated this, didn't you? Okay. Now all Brad has to do is figure out. We have to be a little smarter than that. Everybody keep in mind what I was talking about. I forgot already.
Not the teacher.
The leaders.
Okay, there we go. So I was the two-house guy. Nehemiah Gordon was the Karaite. Keith Johnson was the Methodist. Okay, and I forgot the names, quite frankly, of the guys that represented the MJMI, the UMJC. One was a stand-up comic and so forth, but also happened to be part of it. And the MC was also from the unions. Okay, and there were no leadership there. There were people who could speak and so forth and could teach things, but there were no leadership there. And we all got up on that stage, and none of us held back. I said exactly what I always say, didn't say it any one bit different, neither did they. And we all got along wonderfully. Everything was just fine. And because of that, I'm the only, if you will, two-house guy that has books published by the Messianic Jewish Resources. Okay, because they got to know people. Isn't that weird? When they actually sat down and got to know the people, then some of those walls started to drop. But until that happens, we're just names and faces and people writing things behind blogs on the internet. See, it's my opinion that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the internet, is the problem. Okay? This is the problem. I realize there's some good about it. That's what the whole tree of the knowledge of good and evil is all about. There's some good there. The good part, most of us in here would have never met each other if it wasn't for that. That's the reality of the good part about it. But most of it is designed, specifically designed, to draw us away from being able to be self-sustained. That's the whole object in the end times. I would really love to do some prophetic stuff tonight, but that's not what I'm going to do. Okay? So I need to move on. Before I begin, because I'm going to have to go over here and get my thing up on the screen. Yep. Before I begin, I want to give you all a riddle. Some of you may have heard this riddle before. If you have, do not blurt it out. And if you don't, I'll give you some money. Do not blurt it out, okay? 3 guys check into a motel. The room they rent is $30. Each man pays $10 each for the room. After a while, the clerk realizes he's made a mistake. The room is actually only $25. So he calls the bellboy and gives him $5 to take back to the men. On the way to take the $5 back to the men, he realizes, how am I going to divide $5 between 3 guys? So he takes $2 and slips it in his pocket, and he gives each of the men back $1 each. Now, originally, the men paid $10 each for the room. They each got $1 back. Now, each man's paid $9 each for the room. 9 times 3 is 27. The bellboy pocketed $2. That's 29. Where's the missing dollar? Okay, we don't have time for that. Okay. Now, I want to say this. There were no lies in that whatsoever. All of that was the truth. It's the way I told the riddle that led you to believe that there's a problem or a contradiction somewhere. It's only because of the way I told you the story. Because in reality, the men paid $25 for their room. They got back $3. The bellboy got $2. There's your $30. But if you say it another way, even though all the figures are correct, if you massage it and say it a different way, then everybody thinks that what I call Gomer Pyle theology. Contradiction, contradiction, Shazam. Okay? That's Gomer Pyle theology, in my opinion. You know, citizens arrest, citizens arrest. And that's the way a lot of Greek people are trained to look at the Bible. From a Greek point of view, everything's a contradiction. In Hebrew thought, there's no such thing as a contradiction. If you understand the thinking process of those who wrote the Bible, rather than those who comment on it centuries later, if you go back to the beginning and you understand the culture and the context, then you know in their thinking process there aren't contradictions. Anything that appears to be a contradiction is an opportunity for dialogue. All you got to do is watch one movie, Yentl, or Fiddler on the Roof, or one of those movies, and you can see that dialogue, which appears to be yelling at each other at the top of their lungs for 3 hours. One quoting the rabbi, after rabbi, so on and so forth. But the reality is, they see it as an opportunity to dialogue, and they also know, based upon their experience, that when they figure it out together, there's going to be an actual blessing in that. How many of you have studied your Bibles all your life? And you've read certain passages over and over and over again, and all of a sudden, one day somebody says something, or you read it again, and you see something in there, you go, how many times have I read that passage of Scripture and I never saw that? That happens all the time. You see, but if you just stop and say, contradiction, contradiction, and throw it out arbitrarily, so forth, this is the problem that we're dealing with right now. So I'm going to go into the defense of Paul a little bit. Let me switch it over here to what I'm going to do. Because Ty got everything up there just exactly the way it should be. Bless your heart, Ty. I think it's you that did it, or are you just going to take credit for it? You're just going to take credit for it. I know you're going to do that. Okay, we need to go to it. It's down here. Give me a minute. Since I got here late, come on. Here's one. There it is. Okay, this is just a shameful promotion that I'm supposed to do. Okay, so we'll eliminate that real quick. That's the gang at HRN for any of you who enjoy the Hebrew Roots Network. That's something that you can go on the internet, of course, and hear of us speaking all the time. Streaming 24/7 and so forth, the teaching. A lot of those people used to be at you-know-where. Still, without commenting too much further, still breaks my heart. Thought they were my friends. Okay, I'll go on. Okay, obviously, see, I didn't join the founders until about a year later, so it looks like I'm peeping in through the window, you know, like, I'm here too. Okay, anyway. All right, enough of that. Let's hit the reset button. Oh, I'd have to put the little thingy in there. The little thingy. Still not working. That's okay. This is like a mic check or something, you know. We didn't do a mic check. Okay, why isn't it doing it? Let's figure this out. Set it up so I don't know. Oh, nothing's working. It's like froze. Okay, gang, hold on, give me a minute. I'm going to have to hard shut it down. The whole thing froze. I love computers, don't you? Unfortunately, we are duped into thinking that, aren't we? Fortunately, I have a solid-state hard drive, so this thing should come up very quickly. Okay, meanwhile, I can talk without having to get to that. As I was saying earlier, the Hebrews have no problem with